The cornerstone of tonight's coverage, fraud, with top federal leaders in Minnesota warning they are coming to prosecute and take back stolen taxpayer dollars.
Now, my message to the fraudsters is this: eat, drink, and be merry today, because your days of frolicking and freedom are numbered.
The DOJ charging 15 people in Minnesota today for their alleged connections to fraud in state-run programs.
Trump administration officials also added strike force prosecutors to a team in the Midwest to root out fraud in Medicaid. We have team coverage tonight, and we begin with Lou Raguse. Lou?
Julie and Kevin, the charges announced today allege fraud across 7 different programs, including autism services and housing stabilization services. So far, our review does not show that the charges resulted from the most recent raids that we covered at daycares and autism centers across the Twin Cities, but rather investigations that preceded that, including suspected fraud that we've been reporting on. The federal officials making the announcement say that the 15 defendants attempted to steal $90 million in taxpayer money. They say it's the largest autism fraud scheme ever charged by the Department of Justice.
The fraud here in Minnesota is shocking. Our cases today involve 7 different state-managed Medicaid programs that have been systematically pilfered by fraudsters who treated Minnesota-run programs as their personal piggy bank.
Also announced today, the DOJ will form a health fraud strike force unit that will mean more prosecutors focusing on Medicaid fraud that'll be based in Minneapolis. This is something that already exists in Detroit and Chicago, and the last several months there have been prosecutors of this nature flown in from around the country. Now there will be more of them based here.
So, Lou, we heard from federal prosecutors today. What's been the notion or the response from state leaders?
Well, Governor Walz made a statement saying that if you commit fraud, you'll be caught and you'll be sent to prison. A short statement. The State Department of Human Services noted that these defendants that were charged today had already had the money shut off by the state. That's something that didn't happen in a lot of the past cases that we've covered.
And that kind of affects that 90 million number that the federal administrative folks were talking about. They attempted to get 90 million, but do you know how much was actually taken from taxpayers?
Yeah, there is about, by my calculation, about $68 million that seems to have been stolen of taxpayer money. The number, the 90 million, is a little bit higher because you can charge somebody for attempting to defraud, but it seems that about $68 million of taxpayer money is now in the pockets of the defendants.
Lou, one thing that stood out to me in the news conference today, they talked about parents and how parents have been complicit in all this as well. What did they say in the investigation? Could some of the parents see any charges?
Yeah, so for example, in the autism case, they're accused of paying parents to bring their kids into the autism centers and falsely get them diagnosed with autism, even though they don't have it. They talked about that a little bit today in the press conference. However, those parents are not facing charges right now.
All right. Thank you, Lou. Well, many of the charges today have direct ties to years of reporting from our KARE 11 Investigates team, exposing rampant fraud across the state.
And there was a wild development that came out today involving a case that AJ Legault first told us about a year ago. Here's AJ.
Kevin, today there was a wild escape as a man jumped from a 4th-story balcony to get away from federal agents trying to arrest him in connection with this massive fraud crackdown. This guy who went on the run, well, he's no stranger to KARE 11 Investigates.
After having jumped out of a 4th-story balcony.
Christopher Rea alerting the public to the fugitive at a morning press conference to announce $90 million in fraud charges. The man who went on the run is named Mehmet Oz. He was just indicted, accused of stealing millions from Minnesota's housing stabilization program. He came under federal investigation last year after a KARE 11 investigation.
Hi, my name's AJ Legault. I'm from KARE 11. Is Mehmet Oz here?
No.
We tied him and his business, North Home Healthcare, to a network of companies working together to allegedly forge client records and bill for services not provided.
What's your connection to North Home?
They're just a consulting agency that we partner with.
That's Asada Dow, a BMW driving businessman who'd already pled guilty for his role in the fraud scheme. Now his partner, Mehmet Oz, became a federal fugitive, taking off in this 6-figure Audi sedan. His indictment claims he billed for 92 hours of HSS purportedly provided to a Medicaid recipient after the recipient's death.
mean, this gentleman, this picture, he's one of the reasons that the housing stabilization program in this fine state is shut down.
Dr. Oz, along with other top Trump administration officials, also announced charges against Ahmed Kadir, the leader of Ultimate Home Health Services, an integrated community supports, or ICS company Carol Levin exposed, claiming to provide 12 hours of direct care daily for a severely mentally ill man named Rick Clemmer.
The defendant even submitted a claim of over $400 for services he never provided the day before this man died.
Rick was found dead in his apartment.
He's got rigor and lividity, so he's been deceased for a long amount of time.
And on police body cam, this worker admitted they had no idea how long he'd been dead because they barely checked on him.
I mean, to be honest, as like, you do, I do my daily check-ins. I have no idea what he does.
I've never heard of us being billed for someone who died who was supposed to be monitored. But that's how egregious this has become.
Well, despite today's indictment, sources previously have told me that Ahmed Kadir fled the country back in December. The DOJ wouldn't say today whether he's in custody. As for Mohammed Omar, who jumped from that fourth-story balcony, senior DOJ officials tell me he was taken into custody this afternoon at the home of a co-conspirator in Blaine, Minnesota. Julie.
Well, AJ, you and the team have done incredible investigative work.